Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the 1Mby1M Strategy Roundtable. This is part of the 1Mby1M Global Virtual Accelerator. Our mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. And in support of the mission, we do these roundtables week after week after week, year after year after year. This is our 405th session. We first started doing these back in 2008. So it's coming up to 10 years of doing these roundtables. In September, I think it's going to be 10 years. And we've completed another major milestone, which is 400 roundtables back in May. So, you know, it's become a fixture in the entrepreneurship resources world. So a lot of people are using these sessions. We've had over 75,000 people participate in these. The event is being recorded. You will find the recording on our YouTube channel. Every single prior roundtable is there on the YouTube channel. Feel free to listen to them. It's a great body of learning material. So if you have, you know, time that you want to spend productively learning something about startup strategy, these are great roundtables to listen to. Now, if you are live tweeting the show today, please use hashtag 1M1M. And our Twitter handles are @1Mby1M and @Romana. You can follow either, and you will have access to our substantial amount of content, you know, startup education, information, trends, role model, case studies, etc. We have ton of content that we publish. Now, these are the call-in instructions. This is a roundtable and not a broadcast. So we do want you to participate as much as possible. We're not quite ready for you to call in, but we will be. And here we are. I'll put the slide back up and you can join in. But meanwhile, use the public chat. Make sure you set your chat to send to all participants, and then you will be able to write in your comments and observations and thoughts and questions, and everybody can see them. Don't send private chats to me, because while I'm anchoring the session, I will not be able to respond to your private chats. You can, if you have technical questions, send private chats to Maureen, and she'll try to help you. So we start today with a conversation with Gero Decker, founder and CEO of Signavio. Gero, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's get you introduced to our audience. We had a chance to speak recently and do your story for the Entrepreneur Journey series on our blog. So tell us, how did you get Signavio off the ground? What is the genesis story?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm one out of 4 founders, basically 4 friends from university, and we started 9 years ago. Now we're growing the company to close to 300 people, so this will be a major milestone for us. That will be reached pretty soon. How it all started was we met in university, actually. I was still working there, doing a PhD, and I had the luck to work with very motivated, very talented students. And we worked basically, our goal was to build the first web-based drawing tool. So back in the days, there was something called Writely, which was the first Office, or the first Microsoft Word on the web, if you will, but there was not the PowerPoint on the web, and this was our technical ambition, to build the first drawing tool on the web. And this was really painful. Chrome didn't exist, it was Firefox version 1, Internet Explorer didn't support any standards, so from a technical perspective, quite challenging. And as we were active in the field of business process optimization, we dealt a lot with flowcharts. So basically, instead of just drawing anything, we focused on building the best and the most usable web-based flowchart editor back in the days as an open source project, and we put it out to the web. And then we got lucky that people picked it up in blogs, wrote about us. You know, tens of thousands of people clicked the links, crashed our systems. You know, the story that everybody's hoping for who builds technology. And it took us a while actually to realize what problem we were solving, because it was really love for technology in the beginning. And you know, only over time we realized that we actually had solved the problem of collaboration when it comes to talking about business processes, which seemed to be unsolved by the legacy products that were on the market, which were more tuned for specialists, and our system, also for lack of functionality, was pretty much simplistic and therefore tuned for the masses. So this got us off the ground, that people got interested in what we did, signed up for the free web service that we offered, and asked us for features, asked us for more reliability, and this is when the idea came up, hey, let's do something with it. Maybe there's a commercial model to be found. So we were not starting with the goal to create a company. We actually started with the love for the technology and only found out later that this might be a good starting point for a company.
And where were you doing all this, and what was the ecosystem around you? What were you, what was filtering into your lives from the surrounding in terms of startups and building companies and all that? What was the input? Yeah.
I mean, I was a computer scientist guy, right? I was a programmer, so I was deeply, interested in the technical stuff, less interested on the business side. But I do come from a family of entrepreneurs. So, for example, my uncle, he was one of the pioneers of solar panels and building one of the first companies on solar panels. So I knew that story of technology lovers or engineers having turned into entrepreneurs, so I could see that firsthand in the family. So this was a big inspiration. There was nobody doing software, so everybody thought, Gero's doing this video game thing, right? So software is not real. If you can't touch it, then it's not real. So in terms of entrepreneurship, it was a little bit more old school. Everybody was more into mechanical engineering and things that you produce, right? So factories and all of that.
And which university were you at?
So I was at university. It's called Hasso-Plattner Institute, named after the founder of SAP, Hasso-Plattner, who's still he's still on the supervisory board of SAP, very active, very passionate about software, and he was also very active at the university. A very likable person, very smart, a great engineer on the one hand, but also passionate about the problems that companies have out there. So he was always, for me, the role model for what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? So passionate about the product on the one hand.
Did you ever get to interact with him?
No, of course, yeah, regularly, because he was giving lectures and he's very approachable.
Okay.
So you can ask him, hey, Hasso, what's your plan for the evening? We cook chili con carne in our student dorm. Do you want to come over? And he would say, yeah, I have to call, a person to pick up my car because I guess I won't be driving afterwards anymore. But let me handle that and I'll come over. So no, he's a very approachable, very down-to-earth person. So everybody who has the chance to meet him, he's really a great inspiration and a mere mortal like every one of us.
So that having a person like that as a role model must have influenced your early journey immensely.
Well,
even if that was not direct, it was just having him there must have been a huge inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, you see, it's just a normal person, right? He's breathing the same air, he's drinking the same beer, he's eating the same food, right? So it's not, if you only see them on TV or in publications, they might seem like superstars and from a different world, but that's not the case, right? So most entrepreneurs that I have run to over the years are very humble, are very, just regular people who happen to be passionate about what they do and pursued what they thought is the right thing to do.
All right. So let's talk a bit about, the getting to the commercialization of your open source project. So you were getting lots of people downloading your project and so on and so forth, but how did you actually get to commercialization, get to your first customer? How did that happen?
Yeah. So our initial idea, our naive thought was that we simply find a sponsor for our open source project and we continue as an open source project. Because companies like Red Hat and others, they were downloading our stuff and actually integrating it into their product. So it had real commercial application and people were interested in the technology. So we approached them and asked them, so how about you give us a couple of €1,000 per month, and we can happily continue developing the project, and you can influence the roadmap and all of that, right? So similar to what Mozilla does with sponsors like Google, right? It's an open source foundation, not for profit, and it's simply there, financed by a set of sponsors to keep the open source project alive. But everybody declined our kind offer and said you can become an employee, right? You can get a Red Hat badge and work for us, and you can even work on the project, but we don't do sponsorships, right? And so we said, damn, that idea didn't work. So we figured that it's probably a lot easier, nicer, a lot smarter to go to the end users directly, right? Because if you go for that model, it's basically an OEM, technology integration type business model, which is always bad because you're always, very much down in the value chain, and you have too many indirection levels to the end customer. So, we focus a lot more on the end user organizations and what they would be looking for, what they were lacking in the software that we provided. And the choice that we had to make basically back in the days was, well, either we do a cheap sign up for a couple of dollars a month with your credit card, individual user type thing, which just shines through usability, complete self-service, all of that, limited in functionality, but mass applicable. Versus you go down the enterprise route where you say, my customer is not an individual, but my customer is maybe a large corporation with users in it, security concerns, integration things. They will, throw a ton of requirements at you. So this was the choice that we were trying to make, and we actually opted very early to go down the enterprise route. So we would rather work with a smaller set of companies, but where we have defined target people that we can work together on a roadmap for the product, what it needs to do to be of value, and have a clear path, rather than working with an anonymous mass of thousands of individual people that you can't, where it's more of a marketing play plus a virality play. We found it was more suitable for our niche, for business process management, flow charting. This is more suited for an enterprise type model. So we started engaging and looking for all of the companies that we had in our, that we had relationships with, that we knew. And we reached out to them, told them about what we were up to, and whether they would be interested in looking at that, endorsing it, helping us build it out. And we got very lucky. We were working with a health insurance company, actually the market-leading health insurance company in Germany, very well known here in Germany, but not anywhere else in the world. Very conservative. But we got super lucky that we had great relationships to the key decision makers. They hated the software that they currently had in place. It was old. It was complex. They hated the sales guy.
What software was that?
Say again?
What was the software that you replaced there?
It was a product by Software AG. So back in the days, this was our most important competitor.
Yeah.
Basically, the pioneer in our product category. They were dominating that space. They were roughly at 100 million in revenues for that particular product at that point in time. So they had a good market penetration. Yeah, big customer base, and serving mid-sized and large companies. And we found that with the very large companies, we were simply not ready yet for the first couple of years. But for the mid-sized companies, so between 1,000 and 5 or 10,000 people, these companies were a lot more pragmatic, much less enterprisey, much less demanding, and all kinds of crazy features. But a lot more pragmatic and easy to work with, easier sales cycles. So this was basically the niche or the company sizes that we aimed at for the first couple of years of the company.
So, for the audience listening to this, I must point out that if you can find a competitor that is of whatever idea that you're working with, whatever early software that you're working with, if you can find a competitor and if you find their weakness and if you can actually go into accounts and displace competitors or a competitor that has a substantial install base out there, that is a very powerful and high velocity strategy of building a business because, you know, if in this case, if you're talking about Software AG, $100 million business, lots of, you know, sizable customers, and if you start getting reference accounts with one or two of this, you know, enterprise customers displacing this particular installed software, you really move through that install base very rapidly because word of mouth spreads and everything becomes a lot easier. Gero, do you want to comment on that?
This is what we thought, but the reality turned out to be slightly different for us. So for the first customer, this was true, and from a credibility point of view, this was magic, right? Because everybody knew they were a reference customer of Software AG before, and they were not one of those risk takers, right? So they would only buy software if it's really substantial and working for them. So as a reference, this was fantastic, and we thought, well, let's just replicate it because Software AG has thousands of customers. Why not just go after all of them and replace one after the other? But we found this was super hard for us because the switching cost was simply too high. It was too much of a pain for customers to go away. And so we found success much more with the more greenfield type accounts. So organizations who were moving up the ladder in their maturity, who had used maybe disparate solutions before or very lightweight solutions before, and were buying a real product for, in our case, business process management for the first time, that these were the much faster deals and the ones where we had much more predictable success. So over the years, switch-out deals, yes, if they happened, they turned out to be the largest deals that we did, also because they were used to paying, you know, incredible sums of money, and you could just say, you know, you get a far better product and, you know, at the same or cheaper price. So, you know, it's, you know, go for it. But for the mass of the growth and the mass of the install base that we have today, most has actually been rather greenfield than switch outs. Okay.
So at what point did you hit $1 million annual revenue?
That was probably in 2000, probably 3 years in or something.
3 years in. And so all this while you were essentially bootstrapping, right? You didn't raise any money in that period.
Yeah, we didn't raise money for the first 6.5 years, so we completely lived off of revenue. In our case, we had still a hybrid model, so we were doing subscriptions on the one hand, but we also had customers on the old, you know, software purchase plus maintenance model, which from a cash perspective is of course, you know, much better for a startup because it gives you this immediate cash influx. And only over time we switched completely to subscriptions. So now we do 100% subscriptions. So ARR is the main metric that we're tracking. You know, it hasn't been always that case, right? In the beginning was a lot more about cash at hand.
So this is something that we very aggressively promote as a strategy for, you know, customer finance seed funding, essentially, where you want to get larger check sizes early on. So there are 2 ways of doing that. Either you do it like Gero is talking about, where you sell it as a full license software and get upfront payments early. The other way to do it is actually sell multi-year subscriptions. So let's say you sell a 3-year subscription deal and get all the money upfront. And some customers are willing to do that as well. So, you know, it's how you package it and how you sell it, but the objective is to get a large chunk of cash early on so that you can basically use that as your seed money, and that's what we're talking about here as a strategy that is very effective, as very, very effective bootstrapping strategy. So Gero, one other question on your first 6 years before you raised any financing. At what point, I remember in your Entrepreneur Journeys interview, you did talk about Software AG being very jealous of you, and you were sitting next to a guy from Software AG who basically told you that he knows you because you're replacing his customers. So at what point in your cycle did that start to happen more readily as opposed to being a pain in the ass and in terms of exit barrier?
Yeah, so we probably appeared on their radar probably 1 or 1.5 years into the company already, but you have to remember that the day we started the company, we had already worked on our project for 2 years, right? So if you count, or if you want to compare it to other companies who start at, blank slate on day one, then you would probably have to add that to be fair. But
so are we talking 6 years including those 2 years, or 6 years plus 2 years?
6 years plus 2 years, right? But the first 2 years was really no commercial afterthought, so we took all of the time that we had. So if we had started it as, with the intention to build a company, probably we could have done what we did in the first 2 years probably in less than a year, right? But we just, had fun building the technology, and we just, yeah.
So 6 years, what kind of revenue level did you reach on a bootstrap basis in 6 years?
So I think we made it to roughly 8 million recognized revenue. So product revenue and only a very small portion of services revenue. So it was, I would assume it's quite significant in terms of revenue for doing a Series A.
For a bootstrap company, it's very significant. And how many customers was that?
I would have to look it up. I would assume a couple of hundred, maybe 400 or something.
All in Europe? Yeah. All the customers were in Europe?
We started, so when we took on the funding, we had 3 offices already. Main office was in Berlin, serving the European countries, with, at that point, a large concentration in the German-speaking countries and less of a penetration in the UK and France. Then the second office was in California, very small one, just a handful of people, and the third one in Singapore. So this helped us also with a handful of people only, but this helped us tremendously, especially with large multinational accounts, because they usually want to see that you cover different time zones or that you cover different continents. So even though the international offices, for them it took a long time to really contribute revenue, they were super important to tell the story and to be credible as a global player, and to be able to tell companies, look, we can support you locally with local people. This was really helpful. The international expansion, like aggressive expansion, now we have 8 offices around the world. So having gone up from 3 to 8 in the last 2 years, this has only happened recently, right? And we started developing a blueprint of how a field organization needs to look like for each one of those markets. And basically a rollout plan that tells us, these are the things that you can achieve within the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months after you launch. So now it's much more of it has become much more of a predictable process to set up shop in the different countries. And
when you went in to raise money with an $8 million revenue run rate, what was the thinking? Why did you want to raise money? What was the driver? You could have continued to bootstrap at this point. You were well in.
No, we were profitable as a company. So yeah, so it was really not. It was not the main purpose to get additional cash to fund the growth, because we were growing nicely out of our own cash flow at that point, especially with the hybrid model that we still had, so a combination of subscription revenue and one-off license revenue. And the 2 main reasons were twofold. So one, at that point we were an organization of roughly 75 people when we did the transaction. And we really had no clue how to run a company or how to build it further. So we had hired only very young people fresh out of university. So hardly anybody on the team had experience how to build a real software company. And we were always in an experimentation mode. So we tried things. If they didn't work, we changed. But certain things you simply don't need to reinvent, right? Certain things are out there, and you can simply take sometimes a blueprint approach and simply say, well, it has worked for 100 companies before. Why should we do it? Why should we have to do it completely differently? So this was reason number one, basically to get additional experience on board, a sparring partner who had done this, basically scaling from 100 to 500 employees or 100 to 1,000 employees, this range. So we were specifically looking at investors who had experience in doing that and also building out a global organization, because we already felt that we had things things sorted out back home at headquarters, but we were having a hard time replicating the same thing in the international offices. So and it's different if you all sit in one room or in one building versus if you're distributed over the globe. And we had simply no experience how to do that. The mechanisms to put in place, metrics, focus, we didn't have that. So this was reason number one. Reason number two was a little bit more mundane. One of the co-founders, he wanted to exit and sell a portion of his shares. And we wanted to allow him a reasonable valuation, and given the revenue size and multiples and all of that, nobody of us could ever do it through bank loans to pay him out. So doing an investment round was the right thing for the financial partner to take over some of those shares.
And you chose to work with Summit, right, in the U.S. to do this deal?
Yeah. So we had a long list of investors that we had looked at or who had interacted with us before. Most of them U.S. based, because they were simply in those deal or transaction sizes. So we did a transaction of 31 million euros. And very few European investors did those types of ticket sizes. For the U.S., this was very usual ticket size, nothing, nothing extraordinary. A lot of funds who can do that and were willing to do that. And but Summit had always been our preferred partner throughout the whole process and in the time before. Just in terms of philosophy of their fund, the things that they were interested in, the way how they interacted with the companies, and also the personal relationship, right? So in the end, the fund is just the money in the background, but what is important for you on a day-to-day basis is the one or two or three people that you really interact with frequently. So, and it's a marriage, right? So you better choose your partner wisely, because you won't part anytime soon. It's a long time relationship.
That transaction also was probably one of the turning points of your more aggressive U.S. sales strategy, yes?
Absolutely. We rebooted in the U.S. completely. So we expanded the team from 3 to almost 20 people within 1 or 2 months. And the main move we also did was we basically relocated the U.S. headquarters to Boston for multiple reasons, because our customer base was more East Coast. Also the time difference to Europe, 6 hours instead of 9, and also flight distances to Europe. This was the main point for us. Boston is an expensive city, much like New York or California, so there's not too big of a difference. But Boston is great because there's a lot of talent and experience in especially the enterprise software space. So we have a lot of very respectable enterprise software companies just down the road, and it's great to tap into the experience and the talent pool, and to get good people on board. So this is where Boston was, turned out to be a very good choice for us as a location.
And is the competitive landscape different in the U.S. for you?
Absolutely. I mean, the U.S. is the largest software market by far, right? So the EU combined is much smaller than the U.S., right? And it's much more fragmented. In Europe, you have to go to every country individually. You can only sell to the French with a French person, right? In the U.S., it's much more homogeneous. So the result is that all of the good products are present in the U.S., right? So whereas in other countries of this world, for example, we see that in Australia, it's a great market, very mature. It works great for us, but it's simply from a competitive landscape so different to the U.S. because nobody even bothers to care about the market, right? Rarely anybody has local people in the market. So if you make the commitment, now we have an office in Melbourne. If you make a commitment to the market, you can be so successful because you're simply not facing the competition. In the U.S. is different. In the U.S. everybody's there. Everybody who has a great product in any software category is present in the U.S. and sees it as their primary market. So you will have to cut through a lot of noise. People spend a lot of money on marketing and sales in the U.S., even more so than in other countries of this world. So from a customer acquisition point of view, we felt that it's much less profitable than other countries. But if you can make it, the scale that you can reach is, of course, much more massive than anywhere else in the world. So if you really want to build a $100 million revenue company or $1 billion revenue company, you can only do that if you are successful in the U.S. If you don't crack the U.S., it's almost impossible to get there.
Mm-hmm. And what has been challenging about scaling from Europe to the U.S.?
Well, for us in particular, operating in different offices and getting the right mix between doing things centrally and therefore also efficiently, because then you only have to do things once, right? Versus how much do you replicate in the different regions and adjust it to the locals, specific, specialties. The U.S. is very different than what we were used to in Europe. In Europe, you can fly everywhere and you meet face-to-face a lot, all right? So within Germany, France, UK, you can go everywhere within a day trip. You fly there in the morning, you have your meetings during the day, and you fly back in the evening. In the U.S., this is not possible. So in the U.S., you really have to make a choice. You hardly ever address the U.S. as a whole, but you pick and choose. You say Greater Boston area, Greater New York area, maybe Southern California, or whatever the pocket that you choose, and then you really focus there. Because unless you have a complete inside sales model, doing everything over the phone, then of course it doesn't matter, region doesn't matter, but as soon as you have to have some personal interaction at some point, the U.S. becomes really, really challenging, and you have to pick your battles very, very wisely, because otherwise you're simply spread too thin. You can't cover the whole U.S. with 20 people, right? You can't. You can cover it with 2,000 people. But if you get started, you have to pick your battles very, very wisely and pick your pocket, pick your niche, where you can create the necessary traction. And this one we didn't have in Europe. In Europe, you say, I'm interested in Sweden, or I'm interested in the UK, and then it's the country as a whole rather than picking and choosing a particular pocket in it.
So where are you today? You raised Series A with $8 million in revenue. Where are you today?
Well, we finished last year with north of 20 million ARR, so we had some good growth since we took on the investment, and we're continuing on that growth path. We have the feeling as a company that we're only learning how to run, and that we're only scratching the surface. So in all of the markets that we're active in, we feel that we're just, we're barely starting. So this is a great feeling, because if you're already at, as I said, we finished last year north of 20 million. And if you see that even with the same products, with the same approach, you can easily grow 10 times, 20 times in the markets that you're already present in, without adding anything to your portfolio, without adding any additional geography. This is something that we have to execute on. And then the sky's the limit in terms of ideas and other things that we could do as well.
So two questions. One is, whom do you see in deals these days in Europe? Is it Software AG? And whom do you see in deals the most in the US, competitive-wise?
Yeah, so still globally our two main competitors are IBM and Software AG. So IBM also has a couple of products in our space, mostly through acquisition. And it's of course a great competitor to have because they run with completely different mechanics. They have reach like crazy, obviously, but they don't have the focus and they don't have the agility and they can't be, smart on an account-by-account basis. But on the other hand, they're just massive. So for us, it's a great playing ground because being a still rather small and nimble company helps us create quite some traction in the market.
Very good. So it's a wonderful story of a European enterprise software company scaling globally. We are seeing several instances of this phenomenon. Actually, we've covered a number of companies from Europe that have been able to scale to the US and globally. So congratulations. And we're going to switch next to a different mode, and I believe you're staying, Gero, yes, for a bit?
I'm staying for the first pitch. Unfortunately, I have to leave afterwards because here in Berlin it's already evening time, and I committed to be at an evening event. I have to run after the first pitch, but I'm staying for the first one.
All right. So, folks, we're going to switch to the entrepreneur pitch now. And let me just set some expectations before we switch. This is a safe working session. Whatever feedback you're going to get from me or Gero, we have no agenda but to just give you perspective with which you can do something meaningful. There's nothing else going on here. So feel free to not be nervous, to let your hair down and discuss your issues. You can disagree with our feedback. That's fine too. It's your company. You're going to decide what strategy you want to follow. One thing, however, is true, and it's a fact. It's not an interpretation. It's a fact. Not all businesses can raise money. Not all businesses should raise money, and raising money doesn't necessarily guarantee success. You have to work with that as a fact in your strategy. So we're going to go to Shelly Gupta from Foster City, California. Shelly, please unmute your line and tell us what you're doing. Is Shelly on the call, Maureen?
Yeah, yeah. I'm right here.
Here we go. Go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
All right. So I'm Shelly Gupta, as Simurna introduced me. And thank you, Gero. It was an excellent presentation, and I'm glad that you're attending my pitch as well. So GiftVolo is essentially a marketplace for gifting of thoughtful, curated, everyday services to loved ones in 3 simple clicks. You do not have to run in your car to buy a gift. You do not have to spend tons of time buying a gift. You can send a very thoughtful service in 3 simple clicks and create a memorable experience. So the problem we are trying to resolve here is that gifting is very hard. It is very, very emotional. But over the years, it has become very impersonal, thoughtless, and stressful. And the reason is that whenever we lead such busy lives that whenever we end up buying a gift, we end up making a trade-off between buying something thoughtful versus buying it conveniently. Okay, so when we go for a product gift, we are looking for thoughtful gift, but it's not very convenient for you. And in the end, it doesn't turn up being very convenient for the recipient as well, because 40% of the recipients actually end up returning the gift. So what was the point of spending so much time, energy, money finding something? On the other hand, gift cards are not very thoughtful, but highly convenient. You can find them in 7-Eleven, Safeways, everywhere. But the problem with gift cards is that $50 billion worth of gift cards are sitting unused. You put them in the drawer and forget, right? And nearly 40% of people have lost at least one gift card. So we wanted to provide a solution which is thoughtful and convenient at the same time. And also, there's one more very big problem with the gift cards, which is local service providers are not represented on the gift card. So if I want to buy a gift card of a service from Motor Salon, I still have to get in my car and go to Motor Salon and purchase it. And now with the whole freelance economy coming up and stuff like that, it is important that they also get represented online in this marketplace. So that's essentially the problem we were solving for. So to resolve that problem, we have created a web platform. It's a website and also an iPhone app that you can download on your iPhone, where service providers can actually put their menu of services within 5 minutes. They can onboard themselves and they are done, and all their services are available online for access to the consumers. And the consumers can simply click and buy and give to others. Now, the benefit to the consumers is, of course, it's very convenient, it's thoughtful, it's eco-friendly, you don't have to ship or package, and the most important unique thing we offer in our marketplace is that if I send a gift to Smyrna and she doesn't use it in 6 months after multiple reminders, then the chances are she's not going to use it. So in that case, we give the money back to the sender of the gift as GiftVolo credit. Now, there was a reason behind it that we did this. We did multiple studies, and I met a lot of people, and what I found is that some people during, for instance, your wedding and stuff, bridegrooms would give gift to the groomsmen as a gift card. Now, you spend about $150 or $200 per groomsman and give them a gift card, and then they forget and put it in the drawer. So I found out that nearly out of 6 people, only 1 would use it, perhaps. So the money was lost. For the bridegroom, the money is lost, and the groomsmen never enjoyed the service. So in this case, what we decided was to give the money back to the sender of the gift so that they can use it potentially on something else. And the recipients, they enjoy a completely free service or experience. So it is a great new introduction to a new service. Now, for the merchants also, we have created a win-win scenario, which is for the merchants, the benefits are huge. They are finding a totally new distribution channel. Now, right now, if I own a salon, my clientele is within 25-mile radius that I normally target. But now with GiftVolo, people anywhere in the U.S. can send a gift from Motor Salon to a recipient who is living within the service area for Motor Salon. So, for instance, if my aunt lives in New York and she wants me to send a gift from Motor Salon, she can send it to me. So now Motor Salon has found a new customer, which is my aunt, right? And they don't have to pay anything upfront to us. There are no monthly charges, no upfront fee of any sort. And also, the biggest benefit also to them is in terms of accounting, which is they don't have to carry any unused gift vouchers they previously used to issue on their books of ledger, right? So we are taking care of that for them.
Okay.
Now, just in the U.S. alone, and I want to emphasize this point, just the U.S. alone market for gifting is huge. It's about $550 billion. It's written $500 billion because I wanted to be very, very conservative here. 10% of any retail sale that happens in the U.S. is gifting. So according to the National Retail Foundation, about $4 trillion worth of sales happen every year. So out of that, $400 billion is just simply the gifting market, and then there's $160 billion worth of gift card and e-gifting market, which is separate. So total about $560 billion market. So that's the total available market in U.S. alone, and the e-gifting market is growing. Yes.
You are presenting top-down market sizes. In the startup world, you'll find that top-down market sizing doesn't really achieve very much, and investors are not interested in top-down market sizing, and you should not be interested in top-down market sizing. Have you done a bottom-up market analysis?
Yes, I have. I've done that as well, and that is unfortunately not in the deck. But yes, I have done it on the basis of, how many families within 25 years to, say, 50 years, which is my target segment, and what a typical family sends as gifts. So if you think about all the events in their life and how many gifts they send per year, based on that, I've calculated, and it is pretty much similar to, the assessment that I'm coming to here. So it's about $100 billion worth of market that I'm coming to in terms of serviceable market from the bottom up.
All right, keep going.
Okay, so in terms of our product, we have created a very, simple website. You can search for a gift based on the location of the recipient. You can select a merchant, add it to cart. You can personalize the gift utilizing, you can either attach audio, video, sort of a text message, or any kind of, a photo or something, and then just send it in real time. You can also schedule it for later on within 180 days of the event. So it's a very super simple model. You do not forget any event. Once you put it in the system, we will remind you. Be assured. So our key differentiators that we are focused on is that we are focused on everyday consumer services. We are not focused on extremely expensive experiences. We have hundreds of curated services and service providers in the marketplace right now. And also, we provide you with the ability to rate a local merchant. So once the recipient uses the gift, within 24 hours, we request them to rate the merchant. Now, we are unique in this sense because on Yelp, anybody can go and rate the merchant. But in our case, only if you have utilized the service, you can rate the merchant, which makes it for a much more trusted review. The other thing, as I mentioned, is that we have a money-back guarantee in the sense that if the recipient does not use the gift, we give the money back as GiftVolo credit after 6 months to the sender of the gift. And we also promise a 3-click checkout, and we are working on very insightful gift recommendations. Now, the typical use cases that you can see is, grandparents living in Dallas, they cannot, be part of their grandchildren's life who are living in, say, Bay Area, California, since we are right now only in Bay Area, California. So what happens is they can send out a gift, a photo session, or maybe a robotics class to their grandchild so that that way they can be part of his growing up years. Or think about mom living in New York.
We're going to need to speed up. I think we understand what you're doing. What are your questions?
Okay, so my question is primarily, so our business model is essentially we take 15%, and we are giving very conservative estimates on this slide. Now, the biggest question is, of course, getting the merchants to onboard is super simple. It is very, very easy. What are the other growth strategies can I use in terms of acquiring consumers? Now, building trust with consumers is hard. It takes time. We have gotten some organic growth through, friends and family and, them recommending to others and stuff like that. However, how can we scale so that we get many more customers in the fold?
So the thing that I found missing and I'm sure you have this somewhere and there's only limited time, so you haven't had a chance to talk about it or present it. What is really your target segment? You're presenting these very large 100 billion and blah, blah, blah numbers. I'm actually interested in what is the positioning, what is the real target segment where you think you can find high velocity growth, right? So remember how when Gero and I were talking earlier, I was probing what segment did he go after in early days? Was it replacing software AG, or was it, and he said that the traction that he got early on was actually more in greenfield accounts, which didn't have an exit barrier from an existing piece of software. So, you have to kind of extrapolate that kind of thinking and figuring out you have all sorts of profiles, use cases and profiles of customers here. What is the customer base that you want to go after that will adopt this in a high velocity model? and then you can derive the customer acquisition strategy from that. So I don't think you can go after all of these and expect to be able to build a high-velocity business. You're going to have to pick and choose, and if you want to go after the wedding market, go after the wedding market and figure out what is the customer acquisition strategy around that. If you want to go after grandparents living far away from their grandchildren, that's a different strategy. You know, best friends is a different strategy. I think the customer acquisition strategy will depend on what segment you want to attack as the primary market penetration segment.
Okay, and that's a valid point. You know, I mean, you're right. My initial hypothesis was to go after anybody within the range of 25 to 55.
That's not a strategy. That's too broad. Let's listen to what Gero has to say also. Gero, you want to weigh in on what your thoughts are?
I mean, I'm not an expert in B2C at all, right? So my questions rather would have been around the merchant side. You know, how do you acquire them? How much does it cost you? How difficult is it to onboard them? You know, how much business do you have to generate for them to be worthwhile? So this would be more the part I would probably better understand. The consumer side, I'm completely blank, I must say. Because it's a completely different dynamic than the B2B side, right? So you can't go after each.
The question that you are raising, Gero, I think there is an impact, both of those equations, right? You have to decide, depending on which consumer segment you want to go after, the merchants are going to be different, and depending on which merchant segment you want to go after, the consumers are going to be different. So I think there needs to be a thoughtful positioning of where this business goes in, and accordingly, all the metrics that you are probing here about what is the acquisition cost of the merchants, what is the lifetime value, et cetera, all of that is going to vary depending on what segment you're going after. So I think the big gaping hole for me in this presentation is segmentation.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Definitely, yeah, valid point. I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, Gero, I have to let you go. I thank you for staying for the message, and let's keep in touch.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Sundar, you're up next. Are you on the call?
Yeah, Shamana, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Shamana. Thank you for the time for giving me the presentation. So this is Madhan. I'm one of the co-founders of Mymo Wireless. This is an Indian-based startup a company, a 9-year-old company, which we founded in 2009. This was founded by both my father and myself. The idea behind the startup was to create an indigenous IP. If you recall, and even the current situation of Indian ecosystem is we don't really hold any IPs in the country, right? We're all depending upon the IPs and the products that are coming from the Chinese or from the US market. So having the experience what we had before starting this company, we wanted to create a next generation wireless IP on 4G. Okay, so we started building the 4G LTE IP. 2009 were the days where WiMAX was more predominant, and we had a gut feeling that any technology that is not taking the or adhering the cellular standards will not survive. So WiMAX had a great fall, and 4G took off very well. So first 2.5 to 3 years, we had a full-blown strategy that we'll focus on creating the IP from scratch, and we did that for 2.5 years, and then we started licensing the IP and building products and solutions to various companies worldwide. 99.8% of all the revenues that we are getting is from the US market. From India, the 4G has just started. This has been 9 years since we have done the licensing and built the products. The next 10 years, our projection is to make our own chip for narrowband IoT. That's the release 14. Okay, and we wanted to raise capital. To be very honest with you, we have been struggling to raise capital for the last 2 to 3 years. because of the e-commerce boom that we have in India and the less significant, kind of recognition that we get on the semiconductor companies like us. So the price that I have,
let me try to understand your business and advise you accordingly. One thing I have to preface this presentation with is that in India, in the funding landscape of India, there is no expertise of funding semiconductor companies. So it is not because there is an e-commerce boom in India. It's because there is absolutely no expertise of funding semiconductor companies in India. So, so how are you going to do this? Tell me a little bit about what these 9 years that you've been in business, working as an outsourcing partner to U.S. semiconductor IP companies. Which companies have been your clients? Where have you had the business success so far?
Right. So we started, our first client was Motorola, and then successfully we had Freescale. What we do is we license our IP and build products, existing products, and we charge them for customization. Okay. So, for example, Freescale was one, and Sigma Designs is another company where we built a silicon for them. Of course, the silicon design and silicon tape-out happens in the U.S. In collaboration with Taiwan. Okay, we were the only partners for licensing and charging them on the man effort.
Charging them on what?
Efforts, time and effort. Man hours.
I see. So how big did you get to doing this kind of outsourcing business? What is the revenue level?
Yeah, so last year we did around 2 million. Okay, and this year we're targeting at least 4 million. I mean, so
how many people do you have?
We have 65 people.
Okay. All right. So now, how do you build this company from India as a chip company is a question, right? If you want to, I mean, you can continue your services that is scaling. You're going to get to 4 million, somewhere between 2 to 4 million in the next year, and so on and so forth. So that business, you know how to run that business, you know how to acquire customers, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like that's more or less on track.
Right.
So your question is, how do you build a semiconductor company using your expertise?
Yes.
At this point, right?
Right. So I did a complete survey for the last 1.5 years, and we have partnered with some of the top silicon design houses that are available in India. For example, Open Silicon is one very well-known silicon design house, and Black Pepper and the Info Chips. So we are, having a contract basis. So they take our IP and they, build a chip around it. Okay, and we have identified the RF partners, the DSP vendors, and of course the certification, the RF calculation. The entire ecosystem is well laid out, and the kind of capital and operational expenses that I would require for next 18 months to build my own chip is close to around $10 million. Okay, and this is something which is very difficult for me to raise in India.
It's not going to work. I can tell you right this minute, you will not be able to raise this capital in India. So what is wrong? Let me actually try to argue with you a bit about why this is a good strategy. Why not continue to build a more advanced roster of IP, maybe a larger roster of IP, and just build an IP company. IP companies are a lot cheaper to build, and you already figured out how to build an IP company and scale an IP company. You can build a much larger IP company. Why not just stay with that? Why do you have to build a chip company?
There's two reasons, Shramana. The IP that we are building, there are very few people in the world who can build it. If you look at the 4G LTE ecosystem, there are hardly 6 to 7 people existing in the entire world who own the LTE technology, right? Who have built from scratch. And for us, retaining the resources and ramping up the resources, and expanding the the resource count, plus getting the customers for taking the IP is becoming a challenge because we are not pure services. We also license our IP and then give our services, right? So there are very few takers of licensing, taking your IP. And the kind of businesses
but
that we are
that's just
in.
one IP. You could diversify into a different set of IP strategy. Rather than trying to turn this into a chip, you could also diversify into, you have a certain core expertise, and we could look for adjacencies where you could build additional IP portfolios and build a, $20, $30 million company with an IP strategy as well.
Right, that's right. When I said 4G LTE IP, there are different IPs related to that. You have release 9, release 10, release 11, 12, 13, 14, and release 16 is the 5G, what the people are talking about. So we have all the array of IPs, but there are very few takers in the world, very few. We hardly get any one of them. But sitting in India, the strategy that we had in place was, India is the second largest consumer market, right? And if you look at the IoT, the revolution that is coming up there, especially the cellular IoT, right? That is where we want to, take a chance. If we had a chip, okay, in India, convincing a product on the table is much easier than, telling that you have an IP.
Yeah, but I mean, the issue is the chicken and egg. I mean, based on what I know of the Indian funding ecosystem, I wouldn't be able to get this thing funded. So it would be completely, disingenuous for me to advise you to go down this path, knowing that the expertise to fund this doesn't exist in India. So there, there are a few options, I guess, to try to fund this. You're going to either have to fund it through maybe Taiwan or something, somewhere where there is chip expertise.
Okay. I mean, maybe what you meant was people who understand the semiconductor business. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, semiconductor investments have gone down in the U.S. as well. There's very little semiconductor investing that's going on at this point.
Right.
Of course, semiconductor is a very important part of the ecosystem, but it has become more consolidated and more, the large players are there. There are a few small players here and there, but mostly it's the large players who are in that business at this point. The VCs, there's very little semiconductor investment going on as far as VCs are concerned in the U.S. In India, none. So I can't say that I'm very optimistic about being able to crack semiconductor financing sitting in India. And an India-facing market play would need to be financed in India, and it's a problem.
Right. I mean, so we, how do I say? We also are looking options to, spin off or maybe shift our base to Singapore or maybe US, headquartered, a company.
But be aware of the fact that in the startup world, there's very little semiconductor financing right now.
Yeah.
So it's
that's the toughest question.
It's not an easy
for you.
It's not an easy situation for semiconductor entrepreneurs, and I know I have a lot of connections into that ecosystem, so I know how much semiconductor entrepreneurs are struggling because of this phenomenon. For a number of years now, it's not just now, it's been many years now that the semiconductor funding has dried up.
Right. But Shamana, just help me out. If you look at the cellular IoT boom that is just waiting to happen in 2019-20, right? We're talking about the wearable devices that are directly can be connected to the cellular towers. No longer they need to hop, to your Wi-Fi or to your Bluetooth. So there's a big boom. There's a big volume game that is going to happen.
So the chunks come from China and Taiwan. It will come. The components are getting built. There are lots of components getting built, and IoT components are getting built, and they're getting built in China. They're getting built in Taiwan, and they will be they will come into India. Indian market will have access to it. They'll be coming from China.
True, Shamana. But there are very few. I can maybe tell you there are 8 companies who have the hold of chipset, for narrowband IoT. The narrowband IoT chipset, if you look into the market potential, there are very few companies who are offering. And we're talking about $14.4 trillion market for IoT product and solutions that is going to
But then you're going to be a lot more successful if you go work with those companies that have their eye on this particular market opportunity and become their, partners somehow.
Right. So actually,
you can become providers to them, IP providers to them. You can become service providers to them. But if you try to do a chip company out of India, I'm afraid I don't know how to get that funded at this point, given the current situation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we wanted to create some Indian success story for being a semiconductor company, but looks like it's turning out to be very tough nowadays.
Yeah.
Very tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
So I would again think about how you build a successful company. How are you going to build your business to be a successful, substantial business? And the best strategy is to identify those players in China and Taiwan and wherever else who are targeting that market and go become their vendors, IP vendors and service providers.
I think that's one area we can, we could definitely explore. Definitely.
All right. I'm going to have to move on, Madhan. Good luck.
Sure.
I completely empathize with you with what you're going through. I'm really sorry, but this is the reality of the market right now.
Sure. No problem. Thank you, Shamna.
All right. Okay. Gautam's power has gone out in Noida, so we are going to skip to Anita.
Hey, Maureen.
Anita, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Anita, and I'm founder of Secure Life Vault. I'm from Bangalore, India. So, before I explain what exactly the product is, let me explain how I got this idea and what is the pain point that I've gone through behind getting this idea. So, uncertainty of life. Okay, these days life is so uncertain. Heart attack is such a common thing these days, and that too for a very, very young people. And if head of the family sleeps and not sure whether he wakes up next morning or not. And road accidents are even common these days. So what if the head of the family meets with an accident and passes away? So either these reasons or for XYZ reasons, if something happens to the head of the family, then whether the dependents, do they have the right critical information with them? Do they have all the financial, medical, every information with them? What if the information is not available? For example, in India alone, there's a huge amount of unclaimed amounts lying with financial institutions like banks, insurance companies, etc. Because the head of the family would have invested in these institutions, wouldn't have informed to the dependents or any of the family members, and he just passed away, so nobody claims it. In all these cases, what happens to the dependents? What is the future of the dependents of the head of the family? And this is in case something happened to him. Even otherwise, the day-to-day activities are getting so messed up because we have a lot of data to maintain, a lot of renewal dates to remember, and we also need to remember where the prescription from the previous doctor's visit and what is the password for so-and-so account and everything. remembering and organizing this information is also a pain point these days. So the solution is, this is where I have mentioned the unclaimed amount that's lying with the financial institutions only in India. And this is as per the breakup we have mentioned, an amount that is lying with each financial institution. The reason because we forget that what we have invested and we forget to communicate with the family. So the solution is...
What is your solution? Let's talk about the solution that you have in mind.
Yeah, sure, Shaman. Solution is store all the life critical information in organized way and share it with trusted family or friends. Share only what information you want to share, with whom you want to share, and when you want to share. We have that permission-based sharing capability. And if something happens, let the trusted family or a friend raise an emergency and then get all the data once something happens to the user.
Okay.
So in this
all right.
I
think we understand what you're doing. Let's go to where you are. Have you validated this? Have you started the company? Where are you with right now?
Yeah, the product is all ready. I can demo the product. So securelifevault.com. The product is all done, and we are just ready to market. And we also, hired affiliate marketing company who will do the sales for us. And we also hired content management company who can do the ads for us. So this is where we are.
This is the kind of product that I don't think is going to work with affiliate marketing. This is, you're asking for very sensitive data. You're asking people to put in very sensitive data. And getting people to put in that information into your product will require a trust factor. How do you build trust? And so hiring this kind of company, hiring this marketing company and that marketing company is not going to do it. This, Anita, this requires very careful strategic planning and strategic thinking on how exactly are you going to build the trust. What is this trust strategy? I think is one of the core questions that I would like to see answers to here. Multi-level marketing, none of this is going to work. Social media marketing, none of this is going to work.
Okay.
I mean, there will be probably social media components to marketing, but I think there needs to be an anchor strategy of how to build trust. And once you crack that, everything will flow from there, but that's missing right now.
I think I didn't understand the strategy that you just mentioned, Shamna.
I didn't mention a strategy. I gave you the hole in your business plan. The hole in your business plan is that you haven't figured out how to establish trust. Why would a person trust your product to leave all this sensitive information with you? I don't think you have convinced me that you have a strategy to establish that trust.
Yeah, if you can just go back to 2 slides, right? Previous slide, please. One more. Sorry. One more slide. Yeah. So the last point, bank level security. We do trust bank, right? Because they use AES 256 encryption technique, the same technique that we are also using. Most of the digital...
So banks are regulated bodies. Banks go through huge amount of regulation and so forth. For a company to be certified to operate as a bank, they have to go through a lot of regulatory process, approval process. It's not just the software security.
Okay, so what we have done, we have hired a hacking company. We have loaded test data because we don't have real users now. We only have the beta users. We loaded test data. We asked the hacking company to hack our database and try retrieving information if they can. So
that's not the point. That's not the point, Anita. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As a brand, you're going to need to build trust in the brand, not just trust in the software. You're going to need to build trust in the brand. And there needs to be a strategy on how to build trust in the brand. That's missing right now.
Okay. So how can I get help on this, Ramana?
I haven't given this any thought at all, but I don't think you can really hire help. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. I can try to help you, through the program, but I really don't. I haven't given this any thought at all on how to build trust on something like this. But I don't think you can hire help to do this.
Sure. And just one quick question, okay? Otherwise, how did you like the concept? Is it fine if we can build the trust by establishing,
the problem is real. The issue is real, that people leave, people die without creating good handoff for their friends and family, especially family, or whatever is their legacy, and there's a lot of confusion that happens because of that. So the problem is absolutely real, and it does require a solution. And I think your solution is a reasonable. I imagine, I haven't looked at your product, but I kind of conceptually I can relate with it. But convincing people to create this kind of handoff is good. You're going to need to. Your go-to-market strategy right now is all wrong. What I see here is your go-to-market strategy is all wrong. So if I were working on this business, I would change the go-to-market strategy, and I can work with you on that. But off the top of my head, that's a big problem here, is that you cannot go to market with this as a consumer product, trying to convince people to insert such sensitive data into your portfolio, into your platform. Okay, Sam. So hang on, I will explain to you how to use 1 million by 1 million, and if you choose to use 1 million by 1 million, I'll try to help you. But I can't say that you can, buy somebody to solve this problem just like that, some random person. I don't think you can. This is not an affiliate marketing agency or a content marketing agency that's going to solve this problem. You're going to need to really do hardcore strategy.
Yes, Shaman, I got it. So maybe I'll reach out to you offline to see if I can subscribe to 1 million by 1 million.
No, just listen to the rest of this presentation. I will explain to you how to use 1 million by 1 million. If you want help through 1 million by 1 million, that is the only way, by the way, everybody, the only way I work with entrepreneurs is through 1 million by 1 million. So if you want my help, you're going to have to use 1 million by 1 million. I'll explain to you right now how to use the program. So hang on.
Yes.
So before we do that, I want to ask you for a favor. If you like what we're doing here, please refer serious entrepreneurs to 1 million by 1 million so that they can get the help that we offer here. Now, in terms of resources, everything is at 1Mby1M.com. And you can start with our free blog. Start reading the blog. You'll learn a lot. It's free, and it's chock full of learning material. You can also use the Entrepreneur Journeys book series. There are 12 volumes. All of them are available on Amazon. And you can double-click down on different topics. These are case study-based books. We have these roundtables happening every week. You can use them to get help as well. Our full acceleration program is 1Mby1M Premium. We offer extensive methodology guidance, intense strategy consulting. We help you with business development. We have a curriculum that is an online curriculum that you will need to use to plug your methodology gaps in navigating how to build a business. And we also help you with financing and media relations. Go to the website and look for the self-assessment. It's right at the top navigation bar. And go through these questions. These are the strategic planning questions. And see if you can answer them. See if you can answer them in a compelling, convincing way. And if you run into methodology gaps, like you face a question, you can't really answer that question, you don't really understand how to answer that question, by all means, use 1Mby1M Basic, which is our curriculum-only subscription, and plug your methodology gaps. So dig around on the website. There's tons of information. See what to expect from Premium, what to expect from Basic, FAQs, video FAQs, lots of curriculum descriptions. See if this program is for you. see if you can handle this level of intense self-study coupled with online mentoring. And if that's something that you want to use as your acceleration program, and that's the methodology, this is a proven methodology. People who use this program well do make a lot of progress and learn a lot. But it is also a very specific type of learning. You have to do a lot of self-learning, self-study using online methods. There's a curriculum that you're going to have to use to learn. You're going to have to use the online mentoring. We have members-only roundtables for our premium members, where we do the strategic planning, strategy consulting, mentoring, etc. And it is a case study-driven program. We have over 800 case studies, 50-plus unicorn entrepreneurs, 400-plus venture-funded companies, 350-plus bootstrap success stories. So you do get to learn from people who have done it before, and it's a very inspiring program in that sense if you do have the appetite for it. Our methodology is lean, capital-efficient bootstrap startups, and the methodology is bootstrap first, raise money later. If you come up with a business idea that has a upfront $10 million financing requirement, it will be very difficult for us to make that happen in most geographies that we work with. Unless you're a serial entrepreneur with track record, raising large amounts of capital out of the gate is very difficult. So we have 3 more roundtables this month, free roundtables. You can come to any of those. And we also have these rendezvous, in-person rendezvous at Cafe Boroni. The next one is next week, next Wednesday, July 11th at 5 p.m. So feel free to come by, and I'll be happy to discuss whatever it is that you're struggling with or have questions about at the in-person meeting as well. So we can go to questions now. Those of you who are still in the room and have questions, feel free to use the public chat or dial into the call, and happy to answer any questions. While you're doing that, let me also introduce you to Irina Patterson, who will be happy to answer questions about the program. Any questions, contact Irina at 1Mby1M.com. That's all we have today. If you have questions, I will stay and respond. Otherwise, we're going to adjourn the session soon. Anybody? Questions, comments, issues, feedback, introductions? If you want to introduce yourselves, feel free. Yes, no? All right. We're going to adjourn then and see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye.